You're listening to Wake Up with Patti Katter, where we're overcoming trials with triumphs. Now, here's your host, Patti Katter.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Wake Up with Patti Katter. Hi, Brian. How are you?
Hi, Patti. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, you're welcome. I just jumped right into that, didn't I, everybody? So I have Brian Paul on my show today. I've had Brian on before. It's been a really long time since he's been on, so I'm super happy to have him back. So what have you been up to, Brian?
What I've been up to lately is just balancing life. You know, I've been the president and founder and leading a nonprofit veteran and first responder organization since May of 2017, and there for the first 4 years, I would say, probably. It's just been kind of a rat race and a lot of spinning the wheels. And so over this last 8 months to a year, kind of learned how to make progress, but also manage your personal life, because we're all volunteers like a lot of organizations are. So yeah, just balancing life and enjoying the journey.
That's amazing. Could you tell our listeners who might not have heard the first episode just a little bit about yourself and what organization that you're with, and a little bit about that?
Yeah, thank you. So I am from Mustang, Oklahoma. I live here in the Oklahoma City area, and I grew up in Mustang, and went to Oklahoma City University, and that's where I joined the 45th Infantry, Oklahoma Army National Guard. And not long after I joined the Guard, the Oklahoma City bombing took place, and went down there for 2 weeks and fulfilled my military obligation and got out and moved to Kansas City. I took a job in the private sector for about 4.5 years. And then God just started tugging on my sleeve again to get back in service work. And I became a firefighter EMT for 6 years in the fire service and 8 years as a EMT. And social drinking led to a full-blown addiction to alcohol, and which led to divorce and homelessness and two suicide attempts. And just through my faith in God and my mom not giving up on me, I was able to make it into a 90-day treatment program and successfully went through that. And then knew that there were others like myself that struggle, because we all do all the basic stuff, basic same stuff. And I realized that there were other people out there that needed the same help that I did. And I just began helping just one at a time, the person in front of me, and then stumbled my way through the first year of leading a nonprofit. And here we are. It'll be 6 years in May. We've gotten right around 60 veterans and first responders into treatment now.
Wow. So tell us, when a veteran or first responder comes to you and is like, hey, man, I have an addiction problem and I need some help, what do you do? I mean, do they fill out paperwork? Do they have to go through an acceptance policy program? Do they you're just like, okay, come on. Like, what's the procedures?
Well, so the procedure is I normally get connected to that person through worried mom, very seldom dad, but worried mom or spouse. And then after I get connected to them, normally by phone or through local, I'll meet in person. And I'll share my story of struggle in hopes that will help them open up to me, which really is the biggest step there. And from there, I match them up with the appropriate treatment program that most closely matches their life situation. And it's like I say, that's the hardest step for most people is being vulnerable, admitting that we're powerless over that drug or alcohol or depression or anxiety. And what I really have learned to do is not necessarily talk about going to treatment with the message of that, hey, man, you are broke. The message is, let's talk about your purpose. Because really, what's the point in going to treatment if there's not something behind that? And that's something I've found that's working. It's that's pretty effective for a lot of people.
Mm-hmm. So when you match them with these programs, are they covered through donors, or do they need to pay for them, or how does that work?
Well, we've developed enough now with donors that we're able to help cover the cost of local treatment. We use a local trauma therapist here in Oklahoma City area. But if that's not the right match for them, then they'll either use their VA benefits or private insurance. If neither one of those, they're not able to use either one of those for whatever reason, then we go state funded. And there's a couple local state funded programs here that are pretty good. The 3 pathways there.
Yeah. Because I remember one time talking to a mom a few years ago, and she was like frantically searching for someplace for her son. She eventually found somewhere, but the organization did have the family pay, I think, half of it or something. And it was a real financial strain on the family. So I know some vets out there or first responders, if you've hit rock bottom, odds are you're probably not working. You might be homeless or close to it. And that alone sometimes prevents people from seeking the help that they need. Isn't that right?
Yeah, it is. And that is the significance of having donors with hearts to give. We put in the work, nonprofit, it's a tax exempt, donation. So it's just really, it's spreading the word and finding the right people that have the hearts to help. Our folks that have signed on the dotted line and do things that most just don't.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Now, one of the things that we were discussing before this show is equine therapy. You were like, I got to get on and talk about this equine therapy. And I'm kind of curious about it because I think that we might have touched on it a tiny bit in the past, but not really significantly enough to actually make people understand like okay, we know equine therapy, right? My initial thoughts like, oh, you're just going to go play with horses, but it's kind of more than that.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, as I mentioned, I grew up in Mustang, and the word, the name of the town Mustang is exactly what it was, and especially when I grew up there, it was a small town, and our neighbors had horses, and we were always out playing with horses and riding. So when I got to English Mountain, where I went to therapy, my roommate was actually finishing up his equine therapy. And so I'm all excited about going and doing equine. And Doug's like, man, it's not really fun. It's very hard. And I'm like, oh man, come on, man. I grew up. So I was all confident going into it. So the way that equine works is you have a trauma therapist. So I'll kind of share my journey of equine. Mm-hmm. So I started out with my therapist, Julie, in her office, and she did my assessment, found out that, I was on a severe end of post-traumatic stress. And so we talked in her office, and I was like most veterans, just check the box, check the box to successfully get through what you got to get through. So she said, okay, so on Thursday, we're going to go down to the barn and we're going to start with the horse. And I thought, great. All right. And so we get down there, and her first task that she gives me was, okay, Brian, go and grab the bridle off the fence and put it on the horse. So I'm thinking, yeah, I can check this box, and so I go over there, I grab the bridle, and I'm like, I walk over to the horse, and I just start putting this bridle on this horse's face. And of course, some people may not realize that horses are very much like people. They have their own personalities, they have their own stories, they have their own experiences. So it would be much like going and just trying to stick a bridle on someone's face. It's like, dude, like, I don't even know you. Like, what are you doing? So I did, and I made the attempts, and the horse would nudge me, and it would turn and give me its butt. And walk away, and just the horse did not like me at all. And so after that session, I was feeling defeated. And my words to Julie, my therapist, were, what's wrong with this horse? And so, of course, a horse is a horse. There's nothing wrong with the horse. It was my behavior towards the horse. And so we go through the sessions, and equine assisted therapy. Horses are actually prey animals. So meaning that they are much like deer. They have to be hyper alert to their surroundings and the creatures in their proximity so they don't get made lunch. And so horses have this ability to sense what's going on inside the person. And you can smile and pretend all you want to, but if there's something that's troubling you inside, that horse is going to know. And there's just no way around equine therapy. So the therapist is trained to look for cues that the horse is giving off. So the therapist is looking more at the horse than it is the individual and looking for those cues. And so she wrote down notes, and then there'd be the talk therapy based off what the horse was telling the therapist. Mm-hmm. So we go through the 6 weeks of the program, and the same horse, my therapist Julie asked me to go stand on the far side of the corral and just stand there. And I felt so goofy, and I was just standing there, and the same horse that I started out that just did not like me from the beginning on its own without being bribed with carrots or hay or anything like that would walk from one side of the corral to the next, and eventually was standing right next to me on its own and loving on me and wanting attention. And so looking back through the progress of the 6-week program, the horse was still the same horse. It's not that the horse had changed. It's the horse had seen that I had changed through the program. And that's the power of equine.
Mm-hmm. Wow. I never would have thought of that. I grew up with horses, but I was allergic to horses. And my mom and dad always told me if I had a horse, I would have to clean up after it. So that was enough for me not to want my own horse. So my parents had the horses, but I remember my mom and dad putting the bridle on and putting the bit in the mouth. And I mean, I would go out there even if I was allergic to them, and I'd like give them apples or like pet them on the nose or whatever. But really, horses are like, they're really intelligent. We would turn music on in the barn and they would dance. Like they would rock back and forth to the music. I don't know if you've ever seen that, but we had this horse named Bummer who would do that. But I mean, people don't realize, I think, how smart and connected horses are with people, right? They can kind of sense the person and what they need. And so how do you connect with somebody who offers equine therapy?
How do I get the person connected to the program? Mm-hmm. We do everything just real simple and short, simple process. So I'll talk with the person that's struggling, and I'll share a little bit about my experience, and I'll get them connected to my friend Julie Baker, who is the executive director of Horses and Heroes, Inc., and that's near Kansas City, or Flames to Hope Equine down in Noble, Oklahoma, which is not far from where we're at here in OKC. Mm-hmm. So
your organization, it reminds me of kind of a hub spot. Am I getting that right or not really?
Yeah. Kind of a hub. And then we connect to the person, then get that person connected to the treatment that they need.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Which is really important because I've been in the military advocacy world for a long time. And I think that one of the major concerns people have had in the past with donating to an organization is that organization, they keep this money and they keep their people, and they don't refer them out even if they need that help. People aren't realizing how important it is. If one organization can't cover everything, they need to refer them out. A lot of organizations, they just don't do that. So the veteran falls through the crack, or the first responder will fall through the crack. So I really, really like that. Is there anything that you would like to share with my audience now that you have the mic?
Uh, yeah, I want to share that, as I mentioned, I was in a really dark place in my life. I was homeless, and I just didn't see that there was another chapter. And I firmly believe that dark spot in my life, that was it. And I just didn't really, I felt I didn't have a purpose to try to turn the page. And I just want to share some encouragement and hope in that I was able to turn the corner because of my faith, and that knowing that maybe that there was another chapter, and it's just one step at a time, even if it's a small step. And on the other side of treatment was not only Veterans for Life, but I began dreaming again, and was approached by ownership of the Oklahoma City Jaguars semi-pro football team. And I had literally had been dreaming of playing football, and I had played it almost 30 years. So it was a dream. And I thought, well, I'll go and I'll try out, just that tiny step. Well, I went and tried out, and just kind of like a kid on the playground, I was like, go play, just go play. And I did, and I made the team. And then through football, I was approached by a friend in the local acting community here in Oklahoma City. And through that tiny little step, that belief in myself and that purpose, there I was looking at myself on the big screen of a movie that got picked up by Lionsgate and was playing out in theaters nationwide. And then again, that tiny little step of thinking, well, maybe I can share my story to just maybe one person. And I began sharing my story. And now I'm sponsored to go fly out around the nation and speak in different cities and share my story. So I want to share with our viewers, if someone is struggling right now in that time of their life, that dark time, I want to encourage you to just see if you can turn the page. See if you can take that one tiny little step forward, because you never know what God is doing with your life, and you never know what big step might turn out from that, making that tiny little step. So I just want to share some love and encouragement with the audience.
That's such a great point, because, looking back on some of the obstacles that I've had in life, and I'm sure you probably think the same thing. I'm not sure 100%, but pretty sure, Brian. Those times that I look back, it was just like minutes of my life. And now I have hours, you know what I mean? So yeah. You have these little things that they seem so significant at the time, but at the end of the day, you look at the grand scheme of things, and those were, like you said, small stepping stones, and so important to remember. The guest I interviewed right before you, he was talking about some of the same things. And I truly believe that there's probably somebody listening to my podcast who really needs to hear that message, because it was just drilled in twice today, which is the next two episodes. So really cool how that's worked together. Brian, thank you so much for taking some time out to be on the show. And could you please share your social media?
Yeah. So our Facebook page is Veterans for Life USA, and that's spelled Veterans FOR Life USA. Our website is veteransforlifeusa.org, and our email is veterans4 with the number 4 lifeusa@gmail.com.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you so much for being on the show. Is there anything you'd like to add before we sign off for today?
I think we covered quite a bit, but I just want to say thank you again for having me, Patti. And yeah, I watch you on social media, and we get to chat once in a while, and it's so good. It's so awesome seeing you go through the years now. And something that I appreciate about you is you're always real, you're always authentic, And so, and that's not, in today's day and age, seems like it's harder and harder to find. So just keep being you, girl. I appreciate what you do for people.
Thank you. I feel the same way about you. One of the things that we have on social media is people who are not being their authentic selves, or they only tell, the peachy rainbow happy stuff. And I love it when you're like, hey, we have this person who's struggling and they're going through this and we need help with that. I mean, you just put it right out there. And that transparency in a nonprofit is so, so important. So thank you for doing that. And thank you for putting yourself out there. It's not easy. I know both of us have had some crazy people on our social media in the past. And, sometimes it makes you just want to shut up for a while because you don't want to be bothered by those people. But then you realize you just block, delete, and keep moving on for the people who need it, right?
Right. Yeah.
So, thank you, Brian. Thanks for being an amazing guest. Thanks for doing everything that you're doing for our law enforcement, our first responders, our military, and for your friendship. I appreciate it.
Yeah, you're so welcome.
Thank you. And thank you, everybody, for tuning in. You will find Brian's social media handles in the notes section if you're listening to this. And if you're watching, you obviously see it on the screen. So thank you all for listening. And thank you again, Brian. Until next week, I will see you all later. Have an amazing week.
Thank you for listening. Please head over to pattikatter.com for the latest updates on Patti, her talk show, and what she's up to. You can also find her on Amazon TV and Roku, and on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter @Patti Katter. Until next time.